with your hosts, Andrew Romanella.
I legitimately watched the entire women's triathlon the other day. I gotta tell you, that was exhilarating stuff. Like, I was locked in because
the first problem is with the owner of the Carolina Panthers, okay? You're an idiot. Seriously, you're an idiot.
what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another edition of The Rome Show in the morning here on 12ozsports.com, broadcast live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I am your host, Andrew Romanella. I'm with you for the next 30. I remind you to get at us on the social media at The Rome Show 1 or at Coach_Romo24 on Instagram and Twitter. And of course, this show or every show, and I should say every show that I record on 12ozsports.com gets put up on the Rome Show podcast. Wherever you listen to podcasts, just search the Rome Show podcast. And of course, as you see it behind me on the handy dandy whiteboard, the Rome Show podcast is sponsored by WideWorldShop.com. That's right, WideWorldShop.com. And when you go peruse all of the coffee mugs or hoodies or hats or crew necks or whatever you're vibing with at wideworldshop.com. At checkout, use promo code 12OZSports. Well, not even at the .com, just 12OZ Sports, and bam, you're going to get a percentage off at your checkout. There's just so many deals you can get when you listen to The Rome Show. You just got to listen to The Rome Show. I want you to listen to this sounder from Sunday night. It was the Minnesota Wild versus the Nashville Predators. The Minnesota Wild currently sit 6 points behind the St. Louis Blues for the last wild card spot in the Western Conference, and they were tied 3-3 in overtime with the Nashville Predators, and they pulled their goalie. That's right, in a tie game in overtime, and it worked out for them. Here's a 45-second clip rehashing what I believe is the best thing I'm going to see all week, and I needed the Romo Sapiens to hear it. Take a listen.
For Minnesota in a 3-3 game in overtime. They need every point banger. Zuccarello from the circle. Boldy scores! Oh, my. What a move by John Hines to pull the goaltender, and the Wild win it in overtime.
Holy jumping. What great execution.
It's not something that you do, all the time, but I think in our position, we want to be aggressive. We want to get 2 points. We want to continue to fight we believe in our group and continue to fight to play meaningful games down the stretch and let the chips fall where they may. So I think in the situation we're in, 1 point, no point, it's not going to do us any good. We got to get.
And I love it. Okay, and so here are the current standings right now in the National Hockey League, and I have 2 points on this. And the first one, right, is what it does for the Wild, okay? Because now, tonight, they face off against an Arizona Coyotes team that is not very good, okay? 26-34-5. They are not going to be in the postseason, okay? So you're the Wild, and you're tied with the Blues, and you're both 6 points behind the Vegas Golden Knights, who just made 2 huge trades to bolster their club down the stretch. You need to do something, okay? There are roughly 17 games left in the season, and now it is time to make a push. So the first thing is you just love to see it, okay? Because in a day and age when we oftentimes just see teams giving up, or see teams that are within striking distance of making the postseason, but so many times you'll see a sell-off, or you'll see them do nothing at the trade deadline because it's like, oh, well, is it really worth it to make the postseason? And it's like, yes. No, it doesn't matter what sport you play. It doesn't matter the level of sport that you play. The idea here is you're trying to make the postseason. Right? And so the first thing that I love is just the fact that, and we talk about this in hockey all the time, but no one believes they're out, and no one really outside of the bottom teams like the Sharks and the Blackhawks each have under 40 points this year. They're bad bad hockey teams. It makes sense that those two teams would not necessarily do anything but possibly trade pieces or look to get young talent at the trade deadline.
Bro.
But when you have all of these players that are in the when you have all of these players or teams, that are within the 10-point, 12-point striking distance, and there are 2 wild card spots now, if you're any of these teams, like the Minnesota Wild on Sunday night, what do you have to lose? Right? And if you heard John Hynes talking after the game, he said it too, right? Like, we don't need 1 point. Right? Does us no good to go collect 1 point 17 more times this season. We got to go out there and get 2 points, right? And then the second point I have on this is you got to love to see it, right? Because how many times have we not seen this, right? How many times have you ever seen the coach take an insane risk, right? And so in this scenario, it's so easy for us to 48 hours later be like, wow, what a genius move. 4-on-3 in overtime to get the second point. It works out. Zuccarello across to whoever, buckets, goals, bam. And now you're sitting 6 points out playing a bad Coyotes team. You can get over that 70-point threshold, and you can really start to push the Vegas Golden Knights for a playoff spot. But it's so many times. And that's a coach that's been fired in his career. That's a coach that has found success, then lost success. And so for him, you instill that confidence in your team that you believe in them like that with 17 games left. Listen, I'm not necessarily a betting man, but if I was a bananas man, that's a team in the Minnesota Wild that I might be wanting to watch down the stretch, because something like that, a singular burst of energy from your coach or belief from your coach and it working could definitely turn around the season the way John Hynes was looking to do that for the Minnesota Wild. We now have our resident hockey expert on the phone, A1 Rocky Romanella. Rocky, welcome to the Rome Show. The Tuesday Hockey with Rocky slot is on and cooking. Now, inside the glass, Hockey with Rocky. There he is.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Gary Bettman. Just kidding. It's Rocky Romanella. You're inside the glass. What's up?
Oh, man. I thought I got an interview that I didn't know about really quickly. You got me all excited about the commissioner being on the air.
Yeah, commissioner. Well, no, commissioner's busy today. He's got to execute a player safety hearing with Matt Rempe. So
yeah, I saw that. But that's not what we're here to talk about today, Rocky.
Maybe a little bit.
All right. Well, first, I want to get your thoughts on the trade deadline because we haven't had a chance to talk. And if you heard a little bit of my spiel before you got on the air, one of the teams that I mentioned, not the primary team I was talking about, but the Vegas Golden Knights, to me, had one of the better trade deadlines going. So I just want you to dive into that and any of your thoughts on some of the moves made.
Yeah, I love the open, by the way. I typically have to wait till around 7:10 to call, but I had to call early because I wanted to get in on it.
Well, I'm glad you heard it because I was fired up. I just, as a former guy who had John Hynes on his bench, I wish I would have seen more of that.
Well, yeah, that's the first time I think John Hynes has ever been aggressive like that, and you got to love how it paid off for him. But that's who they're chasing. They're chasing Vegas, who, Vegas 3-6-1 in their last 10, and you've got an owner who probably wants to win again. And you're the defending Stanley Cup champion. You can't miss the playoffs. So I'm going to go get aggressive at the deadline, and I'm going to add pieces that I probably don't even need to add. But they almost made a win now trade deadline as if they had not won the Stanley Cup last year, which is probably the most surprising part about their move.
Which I agree with. And do you find that interesting? Because you're right. You don't often see that. It's almost like the year after the championship. It's like, why are we going to go be crazy here? We got a championship. Let's move on. But Vegas, from the start of the existence of this franchise, though, Rocky, has never felt like a franchise, including the location they're in, that actually doesn't feel like they're always going to try and go after it. And they're kind of sticking with that moniker this year.
Yeah, they've been built to win since year one. And, obviously they made it to the finals year one. And they had a couple of tough exits, and they made their way back with a couple of big deals. in the offseason, bolstering their blue line and making all of the moves. All of those moves really came in the offseason, though, leading up to their Stanley Cup. And now you're kind of looking at Vegas like, what is wrong? And why do you need this much more? But, I mean, they're scary. Them in Florida. I think Vegas and Florida had the best trade deadline.
All right. And how about the losers?
I don't know if there were many losers. I think it's interesting. Like, you might say Ottawa was a loser, right? They picked up Tarasenko. They're in a rebuild, new GM. But, like, in reality, Tarasenko was never staying there. And comparative to where the team was in the past, that GM, you could actually say, is probably, like, doing the right thing and taking his time. Like, what do we even have here? What are my assets? I don't even know, who these players are, what the coaching staff is going to be like. It's like a whole new organization there. So I actually think that they made out. Detroit surprisingly made 0 moves.
And now they're on Detroit, a 5-game losing streak. And I was going to ask you about them, because is that the opposite of what I talked about with the Wild, where something happens that ignites the team and says, oh, wow, people do believe in this building. Whereas Detroit, second wild card, not playing well, team doesn't make any moves. Could it go the opposite way for that team and those players?
On the surface, like, you might be able to say yes. When you look at the full scope of who the Detroit Red Wings are right now, I respect the no move. And that's simply for a couple of factors. Like, number one factor for me is Steve Yzerman's general manager. Right now, Steve Yzerman is responsible for building the Tampa Bay Lightning's organization. So, and it's funny, during the Rangers-Devils game last night, like, they were talking about the Devils' rise and how they're kind of slumbering right now. And like, hey, we thought that this young team was going to break out this year, and they're kind of not. Well, they showed the 6 years of performance that the Tampa Bay Lightning had before they won their back-to-back cups.
Wow.
Now, ironically enough, during most of those years, Steve Yzerman is the general manager.
Right.
And so now Steve Yzerman has been in Detroit, I want to say 4 years now, maybe 5. You can fact check me on that, but like, look at what he's done. I mean, he's got staples on the first and second line. You've got Dylan Larkin as your captain. You go and make a big splash mid-season for Patrick Kane. And according to the Detroit Red Wings, the Grand Rapids Griffins and their farm system is loaded with studs. And so for them, if they needed talent, they have it. And playing into the playoffs this year, regardless of what they do at the deadline, is above an expectation. Now, in Detroit, it's an expectation to be in the playoffs, but based on their recent history, this is I would like to look at like a graph. They're probably on a very consistent trajectory back to the top of the standings, and they don't make me nervous at all. I think that they can figure out a way to win, and even if they miss the playoffs, no one's going to look at the trade deadline and say, oh, you blew up the season, because if they go back and are in first, second, or third place next year, like, everyone's going to be like, oh, what a good move.
Yeah, you're right. And we are talking to resident Rome Show hockey expert Rocky Romanella. His picture's up on the screen right now. Actually, the former co-host of the Rome Show. Now, Rocky, when you were the co-host of the Rome Show, you were not just a one-trick pony. You did not just talk about the National Hockey League. Okay, so at some point, I need to get your opinion on the New York Metropolitans before the year starts. But I do know there were a few boxes you want to check in the hockey realm, so I want to give the floor to you before we get into the baseball.
Listen, the couple boxes I need to check in hockey is the Philadelphia Flyers, Tampa Bay Lightning, Detroit Red Wings, New York Islanders, Washington Capitals race. And that's right, I'm not including the Devils based on their inability to respond positively to what happened last night.
When you think they're turning a corner, but continue.
But that race is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
You've got Tampa
it's
Bay
wild how good
hanging
the
on.
whole Eastern Conference is, Rock. Like it's like, you know, when we talk in basketball about how dominant like the Western Conference is, right? And like some of those teams at the bottom part of the Eastern Conference, like top to bottom, if you look at the Eastern Conference in the National Hockey League, like to this moment in time, no people are mathematically out of the postseason. That's wild.
No, it's awesome to see. And like, who knows? Buffalo could make a push if they wanted. Like, everyone's that close. Pittsburgh could make a push if they want. They're not going to. That's by the way, Pittsburgh's probably your biggest loser.
Yeah, no, I could see that.
Now that I forgot
to say it out loud. Yeah, it's funny too when you look back at it, because also I feel like hockey's tough because there's just names and there's people that just get thrown around that you don't realize how are good or bad to a team. But because everyone just hears the big names, but also I feel like in hockey right now, the league is littered with really good players. And so it's not a scenario where like one or two teams or one move had an advantage. I feel like there are multiple players this year in the trade deadline that were available. And then there are multiple teams with multiple top players. Like, this is a great time for hockey, Rock, in my opinion, in terms of the talent and where the game is pushing to.
Sport's never been better in my. It's just, I'm just so locked in. Like, Jake Gensel to the Carolina Hurricanes. Like, I'm of the personal belief that the Hurricanes are going to squander what they just did at the deadline.
Wow.
And it's just going to be too much for what they can handle. Like, and they're so good defensively and through the middle of the ice. For whatever reason, I just have. What I saw from the Florida Panthers makes them go deeper than the Hurricanes, in my opinion. And if the Hurricanes have to play the Flyers, or if they have to play the Islanders in the first round, like, it is going to be a physical matchup.
Yeah, how about the fact
the only
that
way they're out
of
that game, right? The only way they're out of that game is if they pass the Rangers for first place.
Right, and how about what's his name? Torts getting suspended for 2 games.
Well, that was listen. You should. Why they gave that guy a 10-minute misconduct was ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. But it's just so funny that every time you turn around, Tortorella's getting reprimanded for something.
I just love that it was celebrating the Stanley Cup team in Tampa Bay. I mean that was cool. By the way, like, again, like, Tampa Bay planning that ceremony when Philadelphia's in town. Right? Like, just another show of like really cool hockey class. Yeah, where hockey's just above all else. And last night, one of our favorite rivalries, the Rangers Devils, took place. Rangers won at 3-1. I'm guessing you're feeling really good about that right now with the Rangers positioning. Yeah, and here I'll just speak on this for 1 second. And Mark, I watched a soundbite from Mark Messier on Matt Rempe, and what he talked about was the Rangers haven't had someone that can truly physically put a team out and really just like put like the proverbial nail in the coffin just based on physical prowess. Mm-hmm. And hey, was that an elbow to the face last night? 100%. Now I think he should not have been on the ice.
Sure.
Right? Like, there was an offensive zone faceoff with a minute left and you're controlling the play. He's on the ice. And you literally score a goal 15 seconds in, and you're like, great move. He didn't need to be on the ice after. So I don't think he's trying to elbow intentionally, but he was definitely trying to lay a big hit and finish the game for the Devils. Yeah. Now, what happens is the linesman decides to not let Rempe fight for his action. And because, like, all the Devils wanted to do was fight Matt Rempe all game. And because he didn't fight early on, right, the Devils, you could see, and then the way they reacted after the power play or during the power play, whether he gets suspended or not, the kid did his job.
Yeah.
The Devils just were defeated.
Yeah, you get them off their game.
Correct, because the only thing they had going into that game was whether we win or lose, we're fighting Matt Rempe tonight. Like, that was the only thing they cared about. It was obvious.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point.
And that fight didn't happen early on. And so you have to give the kid credit for that.
And I think in hockey, that has been a little bit of a lost art until recently. And Rempe might be the reason why people are starting to see it again. But the game went from a bigger, stronger game to a smaller, quicker, faster, got to be able to handle the puck game. And I think all of the teams, to your point, over the last few years that have had the line that can kind of enforce a little bit and has speed and quickness and good goaltending, those three facets, it's off the charts. And I don't know. I call it the Kreider era, right? I just think about the length with which Chris Kreider's been on the Rangers. They've been good. There's been chances. They could be good enough, but never until you just brought that point up have I ever thought about the physicality of the New York Rangers and how that one singular player actually changes that feel for them moving forward.
Look no further than their fourth line has gotten points in every single game since. I don't know if it's every game, but I want to say it's like, 8 games now?
Yeah.
I think it's 6 out of 8 games. The fourth line has gotten points since he's been with the Rangers.
And I think they're like 5-1-1 or 6-1-1 in that time or something like that.
You can't deny those statistics. Hey, by the way, the same way you can't deny the fact that, hey, maybe Jake Roslovic was the right move for the Rangers. Mika Zibanejad had his first goal 5-on-5. Now, was it a tic-tac-toe pass that Roslovic had? No. It was a broken play rebound that he pulled together. It was off a forecheck, right? But Mika Zibanejad scored a 5-on-5 goal. That guy's been in a slump, 5-on-5 for 30 games.
Yeah. And we can't deny how important Jonathan Quick is to this team, because you mentioned it last week or maybe 2 weeks ago when you were on, and it's less about the playing time that he's getting, even though he's playing well when he's in the net, but it's almost more about what he brought to that goaltender room, which you referenced also has a goaltending coach inside of it that's also very important to the team.
And to go along with that, if you're wondering why the Rangers went and traded for Chad Ruhwedel, a defenseman from the Pittsburgh Penguins, who probably not many people know about, and the fact that you went and got him at the trade deadline, and Jacob Trouba sits the next 2 games, and Ruhwedel doesn't play, you give Jones an opportunity to play. Well, what people don't realize is that Chad Ruhwedel was a defenseman on the Pittsburgh Penguins when they won back-to-back Stanley Cups in 17 and 18.
There you go. There's always a reasoning and for a lot of these moves, and that's what I'm talking about with the trade deadline. Like, think about the name that you just threw out there, bro. Ruhwedel. Like, there are probably people that have watched hockey since that Stanley Cup and had no clue that that guy was even in the league. And here you are saying that could be one of the better trades, and I just think that's where it's tough sometimes to analyze what goes on in hockey, because also I feel like there's those alternative factors in that locker room where it's just such a different one bad person in a hockey locker room. I really just feel like changes things, or good the opposite way. We are talking to resident hockey expert Rocky Romanella, former co-host of the Rome Show. Now he gets in here once a week and gives us all of the knowledge. But Rock, I would be remiss, okay, because last year the New York Metropolitans had an atrocious season. And they lost their closer in the World Baseball Classic. Edwin Diaz has now since thrown. He tore his Achilles, came back healthy. He's thrown live, looked really good. The electricity's back, okay? I don't think the Mets had a great offseason. What's your feeling going into 2024?
You hear my enthusiasm when I'm talking about the Rangers.
Correct.
When I enter this base, it's funny that you're asking me, because I had this conversation with someone who's a Mets fan, going down to spring training next week. Actually, really cool story. Guy I work with, he's going down to spring training. It's his dad's 75th birthday, and it's just him going down, and they're going to see 2 Mets games. They're going to see a Cardinals game. So, they're just going for spring training. I was like, oh, that's awesome. So I had to share that.
Sick.
But my point is how excited I am for the Rangers. All I am hoping that the Mets do to me this year is get me as excited for the Mets as I used to be. That's all I'm looking for them. Don't have to win the World Series. Just compete and be fun to watch. That's all I need you to do.
I think that's what's bothering me.
Of not liking baseball because of the Mets.
Yes. In 2013 and 14 and 15 and 16, when we started getting Matt Harveys and Noah Syndergaards, and we started pumping our way to that regime, right? Jacob deGrom. And we get to the point of 15 and they make it to the World Series. And then after that, it's not that they were the best team in the league. They never ended up getting to a World Series. But what was super enjoyable about the next, let's call it, Rock, 6 to 7 years of the New York Mets leading into 2021 was that there felt like there was relevancy there with this team. And I couldn't agree more.
Right.
I don't want to go back to the time when we were good for 1 year, bad for 6, good for 1, bad for 6. Can I just get some consistency here? Can I get like 5 straight years of really enjoying watching this team play? So what? Maybe there's heartbreak in the postseason, but this win 70, then maybe win 90. I agree with you, Rock. I can't deal with the inconsistency.
And I can't, it's hard for me not to speak to that baseball analytics as to why the Mets continue to be this way. Because, you made in-game decisions that are based on analytics. You didn't make in-game decisions based on baseball instinct. And that helped you not win a championship. Or then you went on analytics and then you made an instinct decision and it crushed you because you kept Matt Harvey in the game versus the Dodgers, right? And then you continued to watch manager after manager. I mean, we had 3 managers, 2 years apiece, literally making the exact same in-game decision. You got Buck Showalter, who is a baseball mind, making in-game decisions because of a computer or because of a stat line. And you're just like, what is this? So all the years of hype. So now you pair that with how much money we're spending, how big the names we're getting, all these millions of dollars plus baseball analytics, and you're just left with this shell of a baseball team that really has no identity.
Correct. That's the biggest thing. What type of team is this going to be? What was the point of getting an owner that was supposed to be the richest and one of the better ones in sports if in the first 2.5 years it hasn't felt or looked any different?
It's just evidence that if you're going to buy your players, you still need to perform.
Yeah. And you still need a minor league system.
You need by the way, you mentioned guys. You want to know what all those guys had in common?
They were drafted by the Mets.
They were drafted by the Mets.
Yep.
They were drafted by the Mets. And the guy that drafted them and then coached them, you let him go be the coach of the Arizona Diamondbacks.
It's so true.
Think about it. You're sitting here. By the way, you're looking at the Rangers, right? Now, Peter Laviolette wins you a Stanley Cup. You made the right decision. But let's say Peter Laviolette doesn't work out, and Chris Knobloch goes and wins a Stanley Cup with the Edmonton Oilers. Okay, that's a bad decision by the Rangers because the best player in hockey asked for the head coach that's coaching your minor league team that you have now passed over on 2 different head coaching decisions. So if you don't win a cup before that guy, what do we do with that talent?
It's a great point.
Same here with the Mets. Hey, we just spent all this money on these guys. Okay, well now you can't even make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's not good. That's not good. So, Rock, we have a minute or 2 left here. Okay, and I pulled up Major League Baseball's top 100 prospects list. Okay. And see, this is where my concern lies moving forward. I have to scroll down to number 45 to get the first New York Metropolitan on that list, and that is Jet Williams. He's in Double-A. He's a combo guy, plays multiples, infield and outfield, and is supposed to be really good, okay? But then you roll down to 53, and it's Drew Gilbert, who's an outfielder, okay? What am I getting at here? This team needs pitching, badly. And don't get me wrong, I need some prospects in every aspect of the ball club. But there are right now, according to MLB.com, 0 New York Metropolitan prospects, Rocky, that are pitchers that are in the top 100 going into 2024. Now, before I give you the last chance to speak here, bro, I know it doesn't necessarily matter what the lists say, but I can't imagine that this has 0 and then all of a sudden the Mets are going to pop out 7 this year in 2024. So short term and long term, to your point, Rock, what is this team? That's my concern.
2 points to finish it up. Number 1, based on you reading the lack of prospects, it makes you want to be the Detroit Red Wings right now. You want the Mets to be the Red Wings, who are no, we're stacked in our farm system. We're not going to blow our build up because Like, we believe in our people, we believe in what we have, and we believe in the talent we have coming behind it. Like, we're not wasting a draft pick on a rental. Like, we're going to go win with what we have, and then we're going to win some more with the people coming behind it. And we'll pick up our pieces in the off season. And when it's time to make a splash, we'll make a splash. Your description makes you want to be the Red Wings.
Yeah.
That's my first point. My second is you need to set some time aside, and you need to explain to the people and me why playing in AA is better than playing in AAA to get to the Major League Baseball. Because that doesn't make sense.
It really makes no sense. And I could explain it, and it still makes no sense. It's just like there's so many things in baseball, though. I think you would agree with this that also makes zero sense whatsoever.
Your number one prospect, AA, not even your next level.
Yeah.
Gotta love it.
I think it's so funny. But Rock, man, I really appreciate you jumping on the show. I think Tuesdays is your time. It's your slot. We are in the thick of it now, bro. Baseball 2.5 weeks away. Hockey postseason coming up. And by the way, the Oklahoma City Thunder got a real chance here for an NBA championship.
I looked at the standings yesterday just to make sure if their basketball came up, I could speak to it. And I was like, wow, OKC.
Yeah.
Look at you.
Well, led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Chet Holmgren, dude. They got a chance. So, he's just not a one-trick pony, Romo. So he's not just a one-trick pony. He could talk about all the things. Rock, last thoughts before you leave here today.
I think it's the spring. Like, what a good time to be a sports fan. Like, okay, there's no football. Get over it. Like, you just watched a bunch of teams spend a bunch of dumb money on someone who's probably going to tear their ACL in week 2. So, have fun. It's the spring. Nothing better, right? Playoffs for hockey and baseball, or hockey and basketball, and baseball starting. It's a good time. It's a good time to be a sports fan.
Great time to be a sports fan. Rocky Romanella, you have a fantastic Tuesday.
You too. Later.
Oh, give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. That was a fantastic performance. He always brings the heat, he does. And we always bring the heat here on the Rome Show, 12OZ Sports, broadcast live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Tomorrow, as Rocky mentioned on his exit right there, we are going to go through everything that is popping off in the National Football League. I mean, there are quarterbacks going everywhere. Saquon Barkley's now an Eagle. The Dolphins have made some moves. You know I love that. The Giants traded for a big defensive end. And there's a lot more to happen. Russell Wilson's a Steeler. All of these things. So we are going to dedicate the hump day of this week, tomorrow, March 13th, to all of the National Football League frenzy in free agency. And we'll have a clear picture 2 full days in of what some of these teams will look like. And we all know we love that in America. We love football in America. And you and I, hopefully America, loves the Rome Show as well. We'll be back tomorrow, 7 a.m., as we always are. Just remember, send the podcast, follow the podcast, head to wideworldshop.com, whatever. And until tomorrow morning, I'm Andrew Romanella. Peace!
Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money, and we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sports book, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.